Hey folks, I hope that you can hear me. If someone wouldn't mind typing into the chat box that you can hear me, I'll go ahead and get started. I don't want to be talking to no one. Maybe I can't be heard. Oh, great. Thank you for typing in. Okay, well, welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm Tracy Gonu, the Community Resource Developer with the Oregon Food Bank, and I'm excited to introduce our topic and speakers today on garden education programs. And before we get started, I'm just going to do a few housekeeping things. Make sure you're muted if you can so we don't get any background sound. If you have a question, please type it into the chat box and we'll go ahead and address those. Each presenter will have 15 minutes, and then after their 15 minutes, they'll have 5 minutes for Q&A. So we'll be accepting questions throughout the whole thing so that we can have questions oriented for the specific speaker. If we have time at the end, we'll go ahead and answer a few more questions for any of the speakers. Keep an eye out for some of the links that we'll share through the chat box. And additionally, you can use the chat box to communicate with each other. Most of the folks on this call today are from Oregon. So if you want to see if there's someone out there that is in your county or community, feel free to put a shout out and see if someone is willing to work with you. And please, this is just a request to take the survey at the end. It'll take you a minute, and I'll make sure you guys get a link to that, and it really helps us improve these webinars. So thanks for taking the time to do that in advance. So as with every webinar, I like to share a little bit about the Oregon Food Bank. We're a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to eliminating hunger and its root causes. Our incredible network of staff, volunteers, and partners work diligently to ensure that everyone has access to the food they need. OFB is also leading statewide efforts to increase resources and personal resiliency through advocacy, community food systems organizing, garden education, and nutrition education. And we began these webinars to support our network of FEAST communities, which stands for Food, Education, Agriculture Solutions Together. And that's a community-facilitated event that brings together all voices in the community to talk about their food system, and many of those folks are you. Since 2009, we've hosted over 75 FEAST events in Oregon, and it's been replicated in 12 other states. These community conversations have led to an incredible number of initiatives like reviving granges, starting farmers markets, and community gardens. Today's topic on garden ed programs is of particular interest to me. For 2 years, I served as an AmeriCorps member with the School Garden Project of Lane County in Eugene, teaching garden ed to students in grades K through 12. It was incredible. And this also happens to be one of the most common work group goals to come out of FEAST. And today we're going to focus on 3 specific areas: school gardens, engaging master gardeners, and our Seed to Supper program. And those 3 areas will be covered by our fabulous speakers. And they are, and I'm going to go ahead and advance. We can come back to this agenda slide. There we go. So Caitlin Blethyn is the Youth Grow Program Coordinator at Growing Gardens. Caitlin created and facilitates Growing Gardens School Garden Coordinator Certificate Training, which is a 5-day course on developing and implementing school garden programs. A Northwest native, her background includes organic farming, school garden coordinating, and sea kayaking. She loves teaching her backyard mini farm with her family. We're also joined by Rachel Suits. She started working with the Oregon State University Extension Service in Hood River County in June 2014. She's the program coordinator for the Master Gardener program and works with small farms and nutrition education in the Central Gorge region. She grew up on a small farm in the San Joaquin Valley in California and attended undergraduate at UC Berkeley, where she found her love for ecology and biology. From there, she moved to the Pacific Northwest and was a high school science teacher for Seattle for 4 years. She spent a year in South Central Oregon working for the U.S. Forest Service and teaching at a small school before heading to North Carolina for graduate school in entomology. As an entomology graduate student, her studies emphasized integrated pest management, and she had the opportunity to work with both large conventional growers as well as smaller organic growers doing research and consulting. One of her favorite parts of her agriculture work is communicating with the diversity of growers and hearing their experiences. As an educator, she has extensive experience interacting with many different people towards a common learning goal. She's enthusiastic and genuinely interested in the passion of others, especially when they share their excitement for growing plants and eating nutritious foods. And our very own Christine Hannicol is the Garden Education and Training Coordinator at Oregon Food Bank. In addition to coordinating OFB's statewide Seed to Supper program, she teaches gardening to middle school students and leads community volunteers at OFB's Learning Gardens. She also coordinates OFB's new community farm, which is expanding food production and agriculture learning opportunities right next to OFB's warehouse. Prior to joining OFB in October 2014, Christine was an apprentice at the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems at UC Santa Cruz, where she received a certificate in ecological horticulture. She is thrilled to now be based in Oregon and is very excited about the long growing season of the Pacific Northwest. So each of these speakers has about 15 minutes to cover their topics and 5 minutes for Q&A. If there's any time at the end, we can take additional questions. And we're going to start with Caitlin on school gardens, then hear from Rachel and Christine. And I just want to say thank you so much to our presenters, and we're so lucky to have you. And Caitlin, take it away.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Tracy. And if anybody can't hear me, please type into your chat box. So I am with Growing Gardens, and our mission is to promote home-scale food gardening to improve nutrition, health, and self-reliance while enhancing the quality of life and the environment for individuals and communities in Portland, Oregon. We are a nonprofit organization. We help people grow their own food at home through our Home Gardens program and at schools through our Youth Grow program. Each of our programs, we work with our families and our schools for 3 years to provide support in order to help our families and our schools get up and running. I am the Youth Grow Program Director and have been with Growing Gardens for 9 years. I'm excited to present on school gardens this morning. And 15 minutes isn't a lot of time to cover such a broad topic, but I wanted to give you guys some tools to use in thinking about getting started with School Garden Project. There are over 600 school gardens in Oregon, and this number is growing. School gardens provide fantastic opportunities to engage children in hands-on learning that enhances and brings curriculum to life. Gardening promotes inquiry and grows food to eat. These are just some of the benefits of having a school garden. They also really can grow community within a school. So for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about getting started. So gathering your team, your stakeholders, and the garden committee, considering the scope of your project by matching assets to your project goals. I'm going to talk a little bit about garden space considerations, share a few educational activity examples, talk about maintenance and particularly summer maintenance, and then provide you with a lot of resources for you to follow up with. And then again, we'll have a few minutes for questions. So what to do before getting started? Engaging stakeholders to identify goals, resources, and capacities to determine the scope of a garden project. We really want to consider your project stakeholders and ways to engage them, matching your project goals with the needs of the community, and thinking again about that scope of your project. From my experience, the most successful projects consider these aspects before building their gardens. It is recommended to take at least 6 months to a year to plan out your garden, making sure engagement occurs. The more engagement, the more use, and the greater sustainability the project will have. And oftentimes it's finding a balance between building and engagement. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So with your thinking about your stakeholders, stakeholders are people with an interest or concern about your school garden. So that includes your principal, teachers, students, staff, after-school staff, neighbors, community organizers, organizations, nutrition services, facilities. And in thinking about all of these different stakeholders, you want to think about what their interests, concerns, and priorities are around a school garden, and those will really inform the project goals. You want to think about points of entry and engagement for those stakeholders and getting them involved, and that will help really build relationships and test any assumptions. And then thinking about what are your stakeholders' assets, and assets are skills, knowledge, and resources, and assets really impact the project goals and scope. So I put this chart together. Hopefully you can read it well. It's thinking through each of your stakeholders and their potential interests or priorities, points of entry, and their potential assets. And again, these are all things that would be tested within your own school by building relationships. So for instance, thinking about your principal, their potential interest priority is really going to be about academic achievement, attendance, attracting families to the school. Your potential point of entry will be setting up a meeting via the secretary. Their potential assets will be prioritizing curriculum and engaging teachers. And concerns that they might have are who's going to maintain the garden. For students, their interests may be time outside. They'll be engaged through the classroom and by their teachers. The program is really for them and it's experiential education. With teachers, it's enhancing curriculum, opportunity for inquiry, hands-on learning for students. You can find them in the staff room or get on an agenda with the staff meeting. Your teachers really know the students and know how to teach well, and their concerns will really be, what is this going to add to my plate, my already overflowing plate? Parents might be interested in fresh food. There might be a PTA or PTO group or meeting that you can engage parents at, or during pickup and drop-off. And parents are oftentimes going to have time to volunteer. They might have gardening knowledge, and maybe their concerns are around safety. So again, thinking about these potentials and then really building relationships is going to be important. A couple other really important stakeholders are going to be facilities, and it's important to set up a meeting with them, either with yourself or the principal. They're going to really know the site of the school, water access, etc. And their concern is going to be who's going to maintain that garden space and what is the expectation around that. And then also nutrition services. There's some really exciting opportunities that different districts are implementing around getting garden-grown produce directly into the cafeteria. But it'll be important to set up meetings with the program managers to understand if that's possible and what the steps are in order to make that happen. And food safety and time management of their kitchen staff are going to be concerns for them. So in thinking about developing a garden committee, it's really slowing down the process and starting where you are. The garden committee will be made up of participants from within the school community. The role is to build and maintain that garden and develops a work plan. The committee holds the vision, shares this with the communities, makes sure that it's maintained, figures out how to fund it, and shares the plan with district. And this will really show that there is commitment to the project. Some tips for developing a garden committee. Don't forget to involve the students. The garden is for them. Think about how you can stack functions or nest the garden committee into other existing meeting or events, so through the PTA, staff meeting, wellness committee, etc. Developing job titles and descriptions and really breaking down the work into small, manageable pieces. And creating SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-sensitive. So an example of a goal might be, by the end of November, we'll determine 2 potential sites for the garden. Here's an example of what a garden committee and the different roles might look like. This is just a suggestion. Again, this will come from who's involved and the different skills and interests that each member brings. So in some gardens, we have the delineation between a garden coordinator who's really focused on the physical space, and this person has a lot of skills in gardening and can communicate that to the committee, or the committee coordinator who's somebody who's really organized and has a good listener and great facilitation skills. Sometimes this role might be merged, so you might have somebody that has both great facilitation, organization skills, and gardening experience. Other roles might be a parent-teacher liaison that will get information shared between parents and teachers who might not be able to participate in the committee but who are interested. and then also having student representatives. So there's other committee roles that you can consider as well, but these are just a few examples. And then thinking about scope, and scope is the size and scale and intensity of your project. The scope should reflect the needs, capacities, and assets of the school. So tips here: dream big, start small, build in phases, and build on your successes. And here's the story about a school community we were working with where they spent about a year developing a plan. They had buy-in and involvement from the principal and teachers and students and parents and community members, after-school program. They built a beautiful vision. They created a blueprint that had an outdoor classroom space and compost bins and paved pathways, a tool shed, and then they realized that they just didn't have the resources among them to build such a grand vision. And instead of giving up, what they decided is to scale it way down to phase 1 to make sure that they really had all of the buy-in, to maintain the buy-in that they had generated. So they started by just simply installing 4 raised beds that are in a shape, each were shaped of an L. They had the kids and teachers and families come out and help do that installation. It was simple, it was affordable. They did after-school garden club programming and also worked with 3rd grade science classrooms who planted the garden. Over the summer they had parents come in who were volunteering to maintain it, so watering and then also harvesting, taking the food home to their families. And then the next fall, the 4th grade teachers with their students who had planted the garden in 3rd grade came out and were harvesting and doing investigations in that garden. So the scope was very manageable. The site was reasonable, had access to water, those things. So this is just something to think around scope. And elaborating a little bit more about the garden space, some tips are you really must have administrative support, so your principal has to be on board before you dig, as well as having facilities give the green light. So that's a big thing to consider. And having your garden committee and your work plan together will really encourage the support. You want to have at least 6 hours of sunlight for good growing. You want to make sure you have access to water and really thinking about installing simple irrigation kind of first off if possible. And then making sure that your pathways are ADA, so wheelchair accessible, and that typically looks like 4 feet wide and paved. Your whole garden might not have to be ADA accessible, but at least a portion of it so that everyone can access it. And then you also want to think about storage, where the tools that you're going to be using with your students going to be stored. And that may be in a standalone tool shed, or it may be a place within the school, such as an old locker room or an area within the school that's not being used. And here are some educational activities. These are all activities that you can do even before you dig in order to gain interest and enthusiasm among teachers and students. So the top left corner are kids looking at earthworms. Earthworms are a great way to engage kids. They're super excited about looking at how they're moving, what they're doing, touching them, feeling them, all of those things. You can incorporate math and all sorts of fun things around earthworms. The other, growing in containers is an easy way to get started. Containers that can be moved if need be. This is a girl planting some peas that were then trellised and harvested, and is a great way to build buy-in and excitement about growing plants. The next slide is a picture of a perigal that is a mystery plant, a dream plant that students in our garden clubs drew. So it's got all the 6 parts of a plant in sort of science fiction form. So getting kids drawing ideas about what they want to grow in their garden ahead of time, drawing dream gardens, incorporating visioning through kids through art is a great way to engage students. The next slide is, there's two concentric circles there, and that is a bug and insect race. So the kids harvested or found different bugs and insects within the school garden, put them in the middle circle, and then had a race to see which one would make it outside of the circle first. And that's a really fun way to engage kids and learn about, you know, how different critters move, life cycles, that sort of thing. And then the last slide is, there's all sorts of cooking and eating opportunities when you have a school garden. So that's a stir fry made up of fava beans and Swiss chard and radishes that were all grown in the school garden. And maintenance, again, plan before you build. So really thinking through who's going to be doing the watering, weeding, harvesting, maintenance of structures such as garden beds, compost bins, etc. What's going to happen over the summer. So really thinking through who, what, where, when, how, and is it realistic to think about kids doing all of this work, or how are you going to supplement with some other labor. So the next slide is about summer maintenance, and really thinking that through. One way to think about summer maintenance is to grow food during the school year, and leaving the garden fallow over the summer. So for us in Portland, that might look like growing crops such as lettuces and salad greens during the school year, and then covering that bed with straw and sheet mulch, and not using the garden space if there's nobody around to tend it. Other ways to think about garden maintenance are to invite families in to come in to water over the summer. Typically here in Portland in the summer we need our gardens watered at least 3 times a week. And so engaging families to come in on a set schedule to do that work. Hosting work parties with large groups over the summer can really help tackle some of the weeding issues that happen, or working on pathways. Doing summer programming is another great way to get some maintenance done with the kids, so kids can do that watering. But you want to be thinking about what's going to be happening in the garden when there aren't kids and families. So that concludes the bulk of my information, and then I wanted to go through some of the great resources we have here in Oregon, and these are just some of the resources. But Growing Gardens, we're a Portland-based nonprofit. We've got some good resources on our website. If you're in the Eugene area, the School Garden Project of Lane County is a great resource. If you're in the southern Oregon region, you've got Rogue Valley Farm to School program. If you're on the north coast, you've got Food Roots. And then for all of us in Oregon, we have Oregon Department of Education Farm to School and School Gardens program, and actually the program manager, Rick Sherman, is on our call. His website has lots of resources, both on farm to school and school gardens, and it's a great resource. Rick is our food safety expert and can talk to you more about creating a food safety plan with your school garden and connect you to other resources. And then OSU Extension, who we'll have a presentation from in just a minute. Some national resources. LifeLab has great curriculum on their site, as well as other resources such as really inspiring photographs of school gardens. Collective School Garden Network, School Garden Wizard, and Growing School Gardens are also great resources to check out. And then Growing Gardens, we offer a comprehensive 35-hour, which is 5-day training, school garden coordinator certificate training, and we really try and cover soup to nuts of school gardens. So organizing your community garden infrastructure, teaching garden-based activities, how to add produce to your school meals, resource development, fundraising, program evaluation, and more. We offer credits through PSU Graduate School. So our next training is June 22nd to 26th, and registration will be opening soon on our website. So what are your questions? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you to Caitlin for a great presentation on school gardens. And I also have to make a plug for the School Garden Project. that link was shared in Caitlin's slide, but they also have fantastic curriculum that you can just download and use regardless of where you are. And of course, the growing season is a little different in different parts of the state, but there's some really great ideas for how to engage people, and students especially, in the garden. So now we've got a few minutes for questions. If anyone has any questions about school gardens or about creating a committee or breaking ground, now's a great time. And I'll just wait a minute and check out the chat box. I don't see any at the moment. And if we don't have any, we'll just cruise on to Rachel and hear about Master Gardeners and Extension. There's got to be some burning questions, but I'm not seeing any, so feel free to hold on to any questions you might have, and hopefully at the end we will have time to address them. Oh, and we just got one. Yay. So Caitlin's for you. How do we keep children focused?
Oh, great question. Oftentimes teachers with 30 kids in their classroom are concerned about taking their kids out to the garden, and one of the strategies that we really use is trying to have different stations in the garden. So bringing, ideally if you have another one or two adults in the garden, having different stations, modeling what you're doing in those stations, such as planting seeds, or you might be doing some weeding, or you might be doing some exploration. So modeling what it is you want for the kids to do and then having them do it. Quite frankly, I've found that most kids, once they get out in the garden and engaged in something, focus is usually really great, as is classroom management, but it may take a few times for the kids to feel more comfortable out there. And then also not forgetting the importance of teachable moments. So if you do have a lesson that's focused on planting seeds, but you walk by a plant and there's a whole swarm of aphids with two or three ladybugs on a plant, to take that opportunity to go look at what's happening with that plant, and really using that as an opportunity for inquiry, asking questions. What's happening here? What do you think? So some ideas.
And I would certainly echo what Caitlin just said. I think stations are really effective. I also think small groups are really effective. So if there is the ability to work and engage volunteers during that garden session, it's really helpful to have different leaders kind of engaging smaller groups of students. I also noticed that you clarified and said you work with ages 3 through 5. I found that at that age, providing sensory activities were really great for children that young. Caitlin, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
As a mother of a 3-year-old, I would definitely say, yeah, keeping the activities sensory is great. You know, even just having some time to dig in the soil looking for worms can really be fun for kids. You know, having expectations that the plants will probably get somewhat trampled, but encouraging that, you know, doing things with smelling and tasting and feeling are going to be great for that age.
And then we've got one more question before we're going to move on here. What are some, or wait, here we go. How do we engage parents if we already have a garden? So I think what this person is getting at is, you know, we already have a school garden and parents move on. How do we engage new volunteers to continue the support of what's already started?
Great question, and we see this happen a lot with gardens get built with one, you know, champion person, and then they move on, and oftentimes during that transition, it's when you sort of lose the momentum. So I think if you've got 3 adult volunteers, that's a good start, and really focusing on some of that engagement piece, on finding out, you know, what are the interests amongst the families, what are the assets. What are the potential concerns, and, you know, thinking about ways to get people together. So if there's a, you know, way to host a work event, but nesting that with something else that's already going on within the school can be really helpful. Maybe it's doing a taste thing from the garden during during some sort of other event that's happening. We found that's the best way to build kind of interest and buy-in. And then also I think if the kids are excited about the garden, it does trickle up. So spending time cultivating, getting those kids out into the garden and then having them tell their parents and teachers that what they're doing out there. So that's helpful.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Caitlin, for sharing your experience. If we have time at the end, we'll address some of the other questions that have started to trickle in as well. We are going to move to Rachel Suits, who's with OSU Extension, and I'm going to pull up her presentation here. And then, Rachel, if you can unmute yourself, I'm going to share my mouse permissions with you so you can take control.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're ready to go.
Great. All right, so I work for OSU Extension. As Tracy said before, I've got 3 hats with OSU Extension. I work with the Master Gardeners. I'm the program coordinator for the Master Gardener program here. There's about 100 members in the Master Gardener program, and I also work with small farms and SNAP-Ed, and within SNAP-Ed I do nutrition education in the schools. So I do kind of a wide variety of programs here in the Hood River area. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the programs that I'm involved. Oh, you have controls next, please. Tracy, I do not have controls.
I'm working on it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, there we go. All right, so in my presentation, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on OSU and the Master Gardener program, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the programs and projects that we have in the Hood River County area and Central Gorge region, and what that might look like around the state or in your area. And then I'm going to finish up with a few gardening tips, and give you some resources on where to find these gardening tips.
So go ahead and try to advance the slide. I think it should work now.
It's not working.
Okay, well then I'll just advance them for you. I'm sorry, guys.
All right, next. So OSU is known as land-grant university, and what that is it's there in every state in the U.S. there is a land-grant university, and what that does is it's a university system that provides educational opportunities in the community around issues like food, the environment, economy, and youth. So some of the programs that we have within that are family and consumer health. We've got 4-H, the Master Gardener program, agricultural programs. And Extension is found in, it's a network of experts that have knowledge and expertise to help solve local problems and address local issues. It's found in all 36 counties in Oregon. However, the Master Gardener program is found in 30 out of the 36 counties. And the program is really designed to meet home gardening needs in each county. Next, please. The Master Gardener program itself is a voluntary educational program, and the main focus of this is outreach and education. It was born out of the need to answer home horticulture questions. The horticulture agents in each county was getting an influx of home horticulture questions and did not have the time to answer all of these in a sufficient manner. And so the Master Gardener program was born, and each participant, next please, each participant receives formal education from local experts and statewide extension faculty, and in exchange for payback volunteer hours. And those are aimed towards providing information and technical assistance to the public about horticulture and sustainable growing practices. And this is 2 volunteers in our plant clinic, which is one of our biggest outreach efforts. So next, please. We have weekly office plant clinics in the extension office, and then we go out to farmers markets. We have a weekly farmers market that we attend on Thursdays, and then we go to rotating weekend markets. We do festivals, special events. Some of the special events that we've done or doing this spring are seed swaps, where we've had community partners ask us to attend and give some outreach, provide information, different festivals around here. Next, please. So there are a number of, in addition to the plant clinics, which is one of our biggest outreach components, we have a number of projects that are in the community. One of our biggest projects is the One Community Health. It is in partnership with the One Community Health, which is a health clinic here in town, and then we have a community garden. And we manage this garden. So we recruit the participants, we manage the grounds, we give technical support to the different gardeners that are here. And we are also involved with another community garden. Press next, please. Which we have a community relationship with Nextdoor Inc., which they are a private organization that provides a lot of the social services here in the Hood River area. And in this one, we have a demonstration plot. We have a master gardener that's very involved with the Latino community here in Hood River area. And he provides technical support. He has a demonstration. We give workshops for them and provide support that way. Next, please. We also have educational garden. The biggest educational garden is at the extension grounds here in Hood River, and there are multiple demonstration gardens. The series of gardens were put in on the grounds probably over a series of 10 years and have provided educational opportunities for master gardeners. And we hold workshops here at the grounds, and we provide the public with a visible educational garden. And those gardens include, we have a native plant garden, we have an eco-lawn, a bioswale, which is the picture that you see there. We have a compost garden, which is in the background. We've got a Japanese heritage garden, an herb garden, a water feature, and we're currently working on including a shade garden, and we've got a curbside or hell strip garden. So these all, if you see in the left-hand side of this image, you'll see a post. We have brochures that explain about each of the garden and a little bit about their history. And we also have another educational garden, which is at the Hood River County Library, and that demonstrates and highlights native and xeric tolerant or water-wise tolerant plants. And each plant has a name tag, so it's a very visible garden in the community. When we have work parties there, master gardeners are constantly approached to ask about the garden and the different plants there and the purpose of it. Originally it started out with no irrigation, so that was kind of the big problem and the big challenge of creating this garden, and all of the plants in it are water tolerant for our dry summers. There is irrigation now, so it is irrigated very infrequently because the the plants are still very water-wise and xeric tolerant. And this allows our Master Gardeners, they get questions, and it allows another outreach opportunity for us. Change, please. So this is an image of another outreach component that we have. We put on a number of community presentations. This is Earth Day a couple years ago, where we had Master Gardeners go to a local elementary school. Because we're kind of unique in the Hood River area, we have more of a regional approach, and we call ourselves the Central Gorge Master Gardener program. And so this is actually in Carson, which is across the water from Hood River in Washington. And so we do a lot of programs on both sides of the water. We also have a good relationship with the local library, and we put on library presentations a few times a year. We have science pub talks, and we do put on some different community presentations throughout the year. Next, please. We have some educational programs. Christine's going to talk about this in more detail. The Seed to Supper program is actually new. We haven't piloted it or put on an actual program. Master Gardeners just got trained in how to do this, and this is in a collaborative relationship with the Oregon Food Bank, and our local chapter is the Fish Food Bank. So we will be putting on these classes in the Fish Food Bank facility. They're currently building a brand new gorgeous facility, and so we will be one of the highlighted programs on opening day, which we're really excited about. And these programs really get started with OXU Extension for a variety of reasons. The most important aspect is whether or not the program is a good fit in the community here. We pilot programs that have we've been asked by the state or the local agents here at OSU Extension, or even public ideas of what might be needed in the community. Next, please. And the programs that we offer really depend on what's local. It depends on the economy, what is the needs. For example, in the Hood River area, tree fruits are a huge industry here in the gorge, and as a result, horticulture agents and researchers in this area really focus their work on tree fruits. And in my experience, the Master Gardener program, new projects arise really best from the ground up. So with the Seed to Supper program is a perfect example of this. I found a Master Gardener found out about this program and really pushed it. He was very passionate about it, and he thought there was a need for this program in this area. And another example is the partnership I have with the county library. It was approached by one of the main characters of the library that there's interest in having a series of workshops that we put on. So I help recruit the Master Gardeners. They get to choose the topic, which gives them ownership in it, and then they do the presentation. And we're constantly looking at our community, talking with community leaders and partners. Here are some of the community partners that we have relationships with. And we find that we are successful when we address the needs of our community. Not all of our programs are successful, so we reevaluate and then continue on with what we think might fit. Next slide, please. So I'm running out of time, but I will briefly go over some of the resources that I use on a daily basis. OSU Publications really has a great resource for various different gardening or even food preservation questions that you might have. I use this all the time. In the plant clinic, we use the P&W handbook, WSU has a great home horticulture website, and then UCIPM. All three of those we use all the time for answering plant questions or insect questions and how to give best pest management resources to our clients. Next slide, please. Within that OSU Publications, I love to give this out as a resource. It's called Growing Your Own. How you find it is underneath. You can also go on the OSU Publications site and search for this. It's I think 20 pages of just kind of a gardening 101. What are some things that you need to do in order to get your garden going and excited about it. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about monthly gardening calendar. I use this often. We always have this available for clients every month in our plant clinics. And for this month, some of the things, all of the calendars are structured the same way, where it tells you about planning, maintenance and cleanup, planting and propagation, and pest management and monitoring. So this month, if you are interested in getting a garden ready, planning really is adding organic materials and amendments, getting that garden ready. Once you have your soil is consistently above 60 degrees, you can start to plant some of those warm season vegetables like beans and sweet corn. Add compost to some of your cane berries like gooseberries, currants, and blueberries, and compost again to some of the perennial vegetables such as asparagus and rhubarb. It also gives some regional information, which is helpful, so take a look at that. Some of the vegetables that you can consider planting right now: beets, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrots, chard, leeks, lettuce, onion. Some of those cooler spring vegetables will be fine. Just monitor for what you got in there. You might want to monitor for slugs, spittle bugs, aphids. Remove weeds. Weeds act as a nursery a lot of times for some of those insect pests, so clean up your garden and just get ready to watch things grow.
All right. Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate that. We do have one question that's already come in, and if there are any others, please feel free to type those into the chat box. Rachel, one of the questions for you is, do any of the extension gardens include hives, and is there education for master gardeners on their promotion?
We do not have hives here. It's one of my personal goals. I'm a trained entomologist, so I'd like to have hives here, but it's kind of a slow process. I've got to learn a little bit more myself. There is a master beekeeping program through OSU, and different regions have that program. We don't have that program through the OSU Extension Office here, and so I actually have another community partnership with one of the local shops that they put on beekeeping classes once a month, and so I attend those. But it just really check in with your OSU Extension Office and see if they have that program. If not, contact the Master Beekeeping Program through OSU, and they can give you more information there.
I love that there's a master program for just about anything now. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
One other question we just got, which I think is really important, is what if someone lives in one of the few counties that doesn't have master gardeners or the training? How do you reach out? Can they reach out to existing master gardeners for programs? How do you go about kind of initiating relationships when it doesn't already exist there?
That's a great question. So the first thing I would do is go to your local extension office. As I said before, every county does have an office, and there will be some resources there. If you don't have a master gardener program, maybe it's something to consider getting a master gardener program started in your area. We do have an online resource, so you can get trained online to be a master gardener. What the payback hours look like, I'm unsure of that. Gail Langolato is the statewide coordinator, and she might have more information on how to pay back hours if you are trained online and you don't have a program. So contact your local extension office and see about, I know that some of the 6 counties I think are kind of in the southeast area of Oregon. So there will be a Master Gardener program locally. So go to your extension office.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rachel. And if there are any additional questions, please hold on to them, and if we have time at the end, we'll address them. But now I'd like to invite Christine to unmute yourself, and if I will attempt to give you control of the mouse, but if it doesn't work, feel free to just say next.
Sure. It looks like it's not working.
No, try that.
Looks like I now have it. Let's see. No.
That's very interesting. Okay, well then I will advance for you.
Thanks. Well, good. Thanks so much for having me. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be speaking about our Seed to Supper program, which is a beginning gardening course, a 5-week beginning gardening course for low-income adults that provides them with the tools they need to successfully grow a portion of their food on a limited budget. But before I get into the basics of the program, I wanted to put it in a little bit of context of how it emerged and where it's coming from. As you can see on these slides, when you think about a food bank, oftentimes people think of large warehouses, trucks, pallets of boxes of canned foods, and that really is the old food bank model. We've really moved away from that at Oregon Food Bank and are looking much more holistically at the food system to look at how we can address the root causes of hunger. Next, please. And there's a really great question that Mark Winnig poses in his book, Closing the Food Gap, where he asks, what could the effects of food banks be if all the energy that was put into soliciting and distributing wasted food was put into ending poverty and hunger? Next, please. And for us, part of the solution to ending poverty and hunger is really going beyond emergency food and looking at the root causes through public policy initiatives and advocacy initiatives, through providing nutrition education and garden education, which is what I'll be speaking about today, and through mobilizing grassroots communities to organize themselves, and that's the work of FEAST and the Community Food Systems team. Next. In 2001, we moved to our new facility in Northeast Portland, and as you can see on this photo here, the aerial that's in red shows there was a lot of vacant land that we felt would be could be put to use to demonstrate, how gardening and growing food can happen anywhere. So we really took advantage of that opportunity and started to develop all the unused land available next to our warehouse into a learning garden. Next, please. We have a really abundant, thriving learning garden now at both of our Northeast OFB site and our site in Beaverton, and these gardens are really about growing not only vegetables but more importantly relationships and hope. We really take the time. It's a place where anyone from the community can come to learn about how to grow their own food and then can share in the harvest and take home whatever they need. And we saw what a success this was, having clients come to the garden and empowering them with those learning opportunities. But it soon became apparent that there was actually just a growing demand, that this garden wasn't meeting the need for the number of people that were interested and wanting to learn how to grow their own food. And so that's really where Seed to Supper emerged from. Not only were there a lack of programs, but oftentimes programs were far away. They were time-consuming. A lot of programs require a 12-week commitment or longer. They can be expensive. And there's also a lack of curriculum out there for adults. There's a lot of, as Caitlin mentioned, there's 600 school gardens in Oregon, and there's a plethora of youth gardening curricula out there, but there's not that much that's very simple and available for adults that are trying to garden on a budget. So that's really where we noticed that gap and that need, and that's where this program then emerged from. Next, please. So it has become part of our long-term strategy in addressing hunger, and it really, as I said, is about empowering adults with transformative learning experiences that bring about long-term solutions to end hunger. Next. So the program began in 2007, and it was sort of a combination of single class sessions and then longer 5 class sessions. And over the course of about 5 years, we gained a lot of experience working with food pantries and other social service agencies throughout the Portland metro area and delivering these classes. And then in 2012, collected all of that data and that experience of offering this program, and partnered up with OSU Extension to redesign the curriculum using all of the wonderful qualitative and quantitative data that we had collected. And we then relaunched this curriculum in 2012, 2013, and in 2013 it was actually accepted for receiving Master Gardener hours. So Master Gardeners, this still needs to be approved county by county, but in general, Master Gardeners are able to receive hours to teach the program. So that has been a really wonderful partnership with OSU. In 2014, we then realized that we needed to expand beyond English language to also providing a Spanish version of the program. So we translated the curriculum, and Siembra la Cena is our Spanish version of the course that we are beginning to roll out. 2014 was also the big year for expanding the program outside of the Portland metro area. So we had offered the course in Lynn and Benton counties originally, but more and more people were hearing about it and requesting to bring the program to their county. So last year we saw the first big expansion, and this year has, gone much beyond our expectation. We're going to be in about 18 counties across the state this year, which is far beyond what we had predicted, and we're not doing any recruitment ourselves. These are all, as Rachel mentioned, community-led solutions. These are communities that are coming and asking for it, and identifying that need and seeing that this might be a good fit to address some of the issues in their own communities. Next. So it's a really beneficial partnership with OSU Extension simply because it helps to deepen the impact that OSU Extension can have through its Master Gardener program by specifically working with underserved communities and making links and partnerships with local pantries and food banks and social service agencies that OSU previously had never been in partnership with. So that has been absolutely an amazing process to see. And then from Oregon Food Bank's side, it has been really beneficial because it gives us a lot more credibility, because the entire curriculum has been research-based, has been vetted by experts, horticulture experts from OSU, so we know we're giving sound advice, and also we're able to benefit from the large, extensive Master Gardener volunteer pool that exists across the state, and use that as the primary vehicle that we use to deliver the program. Next. So it's a 5-week course, as I mentioned, offered in both English and Spanish, and it's really offered at a wide variety of sites, whether it's at housing facilities, senior centers, tribal agencies, libraries, community centers, community gardens. Each community decides where they will host the class in order to meet the needs of those that are interested in attending. Next. The entire program model is based on this collaborative model, sort of a cascade where we at Oregon Food Bank manage the program in collaboration with OSU Extension, but really the delivery happens on the ground in the community. So locally in Portland we have host agencies, and their role is to recruit participants to come take the classes. We do the volunteer recruitment and training ourselves, and then match those volunteers up with host agencies. Outside of Multnomah, Clackamas, in Washington counties, we have satellite partners who sort of play that role for us. So they're the ones that are directly recruiting volunteers. We partner with them to train their volunteers, and those satellite partners are then setting up classes and doing participant recruitment and all of that themselves. So it really is a cross-community collaborative effort. Next. This here is just a little illustration of where we have expanded to or will be expanding this year in 2015. So again, as I said, there's about 18 stars on the map, and last year it was about 5. So it's really expanded very, very rapidly, and will continue to do so. And if I were to put a map up of the U.S., I would put a star in North Carolina now. It's our first out-of-state partnership for Seed to Supper. There's a food bank in North Carolina that has partnered with their extension office to offer Seed to Supper. And there's several other states that now that have approached us that are interested in doing that as well, in Wisconsin and other areas all the way up into Canada. So we foresee this expanding, continuing to expand not only in Oregon but across the country. Next. So satellite partners, as I mentioned, are the ones that outside of the Portland area are the ones that will recruit volunteers and participants. They will have to provide their own funds to compile course kits and provide meeting space. A garden is helpful, not required. This is primarily an indoor class with the idea that it provides the foundational skills and knowledge that folks would need to be able to then go out into a garden at a later time to put their knowledge to practice. Next. The course is divided into 5 weeks, and there's 5 chapters. Each chapter sort of moves through the sequence of what you would need to know to go from planning, assessing your site, all the way to planting out the garden, maintaining it, and harvesting it. So these are the topics that are covered sequentially in each week, with the final week being all about harvesting the bounty, a focus on nutrition. And this is a really nice complement to our Cooking Matters program, which there was a webinar on a few sessions ago. And Seed to Supper really only goes so far as the harvest, and Cooking Matters helps it to take that much further by actually talking about how you would cook your produce and use it for improved nutrition. Next. The program is designed to be very flexible. We want it to be able to address local needs and meet participant interests. So while it is primarily classroom-based, a lot of our programs definitely use the garden as a place, a living classroom where they can then, take a lesson on improving soil and going outside and actually learning what that looks like. Next. The PowerPoint slides that we use are mostly photos. We're working with very varied audiences with limited literacy levels, so it's mostly visuals, and the visuals, really try to illustrate a point like how do you water at the roots, or how do you do a spot check to see if it's time to water. So it's very practical oriented. Next. We work with garden volunteers who teach the program. As I mentioned, Master Gardeners are a huge core of our volunteers, but you don't need to be a Master Gardener to teach this program. You simply need to have knowledge and experience of gardening in your area. And we provide extensive speaker notes and teaching notes that instructors can use. So it's really more about how someone who is excited to be a facilitator and help bring this knowledge and enthusiasm for learning how to garden, rather than someone who knows everything there is to know about it. Next. Our classes really vary in size and numbers. Generally we try to cap it at 25 because it can be hard to really provide individualized learning and attention when it gets beyond that number. We have people from all backgrounds of income, education, literacy, mobility, and gardening experience. And there's a variety of reasons why they attend. For some, it's not because they're trying to save money. For some, it's the community aspect of being able to come together and learn with others. So we always like to learn what motivates people to come to our program. Next. One of the motivations definitely is the little gifts that they get to take away. So every participant gets to take home a really comprehensive course book, which provides those 5 chapters, the 5 sequence of how to plan and plant and harvest from your garden. We also provide certificates, which are really highly valued by our participants. It's something that they can include in their resume if they're applying for a job. We also provide starts and seeds, and most importantly, I think, is fostering the new community connections. So after they leave the course, they have new neighbors and friends that they can call if they have a question about what to do in their garden. Next. Next. And then next again, please. So this is just some of the feedback that we've received from some of our participants, and it really goes to show just again how valuable this program is to people. It provides them new knowledge for folks that aren't from Oregon, on how to adapt to this region. It helps them to try new foods. For some people, it's about stress and sort of how therapeutic it can be to work in a garden setting. And it often serves as a primary motivator for people to then look for a garden plot, community garden plot, or try to extend where they're growing. Next. So some lessons learned based on about the 8 years that we've been running the program. This is an evolving program, so for us evaluation is really central to its continued development and improvement. So we take evaluation really seriously and are working with OSU Extension on that, and hope to continue to adapt the program and the curricula to improve it and make it more effective and useful. It's never just about gardening. As I mentioned, it's about community building, making connections, fostering those relationships, and empowering people. So yes, learning how to plant a seed and watch it grow, but more importantly, giving people that sense of their own empowerment in their own lives. You're only as strong as your partnerships. For us, this entire program is based on a partnership collaborative model. So, it's absolutely essential that we take the time. As Caitlin mentioned, 6 months to a year for planting a school garden. I would say the same thing for Seed to Supper. The more time that you spent in developing those relationships ahead of time with your local food pantry, your local service agencies where you hope to host the class, with your local community centers, you'll be able to reap those benefits later on when you actually run the program with everyone involved. Learners are experts in their own lives. This one is really key to Seed to Supper. Yes, the program is based on research-based expert advice from OSU, but we really see the main experts in the room as everyone who's in the room, all the participants that take our program, and we train our volunteers to have that understanding and that approach in how they teach, so that they're really building off of existing knowledge in the room rather than just trying to impart expertise. Because we all know that from an adult education perspective, it's much more valuable to build off of what people know and what they're excited about. Related to that, teaching is an art to be cultivated. Oftentimes, we assume that if someone is an expert in a subject matter that they can then teach it, but that really, in our experience, we've seen that that's not the case, and that teaching really is an art, and someone may be a master gardener and be able to teach you everything there is to know about growing a garden, but the way that you teach really has a huge impact on how people will be able to take in that information and then translate it in their own lives and their own experiences. So we really take teaching very seriously, and that is actually the bulk of our training that we provide, is on how to be an effective educator and facilitator. And then let go and see where folks lead you. That's just to say that this really is not a one-size-fits-all curriculum. It's really about, has a lot of flexibility, and we want to sort of see where communities will take this themselves rather than dictate the process and try to have, one approach for the entire state. We know that that doesn't work. Next. Future plans. So the program as it currently stands is as I mentioned, PowerPoint based. It's pretty, it's not that hands-on. It's classroom based, and we, through our evaluation and our feedback that we've received, we know that hands-on learning experiences are often the most effective. So we are in the process of developing hands-on activities that can complement the classroom-based sessions and the PowerPoint sessions. So we have an AmeriCorps member working on that currently, and we will continue to prioritize that in the coming year so that we can have a whole toolkit of different hands-on lessons that we can use with our adult learners. Popular education tools is another thing related to that. So providing more tools for our educators to use popular education methods, and those are methods that really draw upon the wisdom and knowledge of each learner in the room rather than sort of assuming that folks are coming in without any knowledge on a subject. We also really need to continue to expand our resources on how to garden on a budget. We do have a good foundational list on our website and in our course materials, but there are so many amazing ideas that continue and innovations that continue to be developed around what you can do, very cheaply, sort of DIY style, and we'd like to be able to continue to collect those ideas and feature them and share them throughout our program across the state so that folks know that they don't need to be spending a lot of money and that they can really use locally available materials. We are now moving to Central and Eastern Oregon, and that for us has highlighted how Western biased our curriculum really is. It's not appropriate for the Central Eastern growing conditions of Oregon, and so we are going to be working with a team based out there to adapt the curriculum and create an edition that would be suitable for that growing region in the high desert. And then, as I mentioned earlier, just continued statewide expansion through developing new satellite partnerships. Next, please. So if you are interested in bringing Seed to Supper to your county, I've highlighted a couple of steps here that I would recommend taking. The first is to identify the need. Is this something that is really needed in your area? And if so, what resources are available locally? And I don't just mean financial resources, I mean resources in terms of time, staff members that could work on this, volunteers, community partners. Doing a really thorough resource assessment will be very critical as a first step. The second step then, once you know what those resources are, is to develop partnerships. So making the connections between the food banks and the extension office, between local housing agencies and community gardens, and starting to create a web of partners that can help to launch this program once you bring it to the county. And then the third step will be to get in touch with me at Oregon Food Bank and learn more about the satellite partnership application process and submit an application that you would develop with your community partners. Next, please. This is just a little plug for our website. It is continued to be updated, but at the moment probably the most useful part of this website for you all across the state will be the tips on how to garden on a budget. So there's a section that talks about ideas for getting soil and starts and trellis materials, and if you don't have access to garden space. So it's a nice little brainstorm list that you can refer to. Next.
All right.
That's all I have, if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Christine. We are at time, so if you have time to stay on, I think a few questions would be welcome. But just to wrap up for folks who do need to hop off, please complete the survey. I just linked to it in the chat box, and we'll send an email to all of you with that as well. It'll take just a minute. And a big thank you to our presenters today, Caitlin, Rachel, and Christine. Thank you so much. And additionally, we will have our next quarterly webinar on food justice, July 8th, 10:30 to 11:45, and this is in preparation for the Closing the Hunger Gap conference in September that we're hosting. So Christine, if you can stay online, there are some questions coming on for you. And those of you who need to hop off, thanks so much for attending, and feel free to stay on for a couple more minutes. Christine, how can we find out when and where Seed to Supper will be held?
Aha. There is a list on our website, on that web link that I listed on the previous slide, where we've listed the counties that are currently active in Seed to Supper. So we have the names and emails for the county satellite partners in the counties where there are currently programs. So the first thing I'd suggest is to go to that list and see if your county is on there. If it's not on there and you're interested in bringing it to your county, then I would suggest following those steps that I have outlined of talking to your local extension office, talking to your local food bank or food pantry, and if there's enough interest, then getting in touch with me and seeing about bringing it to your county. But the list of existing counties and contact information is on the website. And I just want to highlight that there is a lot of the classes are already happening for this spring. So you may not be able to get involved this spring to teach a class, but you might be able to go and sit in on a class to see what it's like and then get trained for next year.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Another one for you is, does the Seed to Supper curriculum discuss how to garden in small spaces, like for people who live in apartments or need to container garden?
It does. There is a small section on that, as well as on vertical gardening, but we actually have a supplementary container gardening curriculum that we provide to our Seed to Supper satellite partners that's specifically on container gardening. So container gardening is not a primary topic in this program, but we provide that we have like a packaged workshop for that already that we do provide our volunteers to be able to teach. And more through our own observation and feedback, we are realizing that most of our students that are coming to the classes are actually container gardening. We had a class last night where out of the 15 students, 11 were container gardening. So it really has highlighted for us the need to actually formally incorporate that topic into the curriculum. So we will probably do that for the edition next year.
How exciting. There's so many developments happening for Seed to Supper. It looks like those are all the questions. I just want to put out a quick call out if there are any final questions for any of our presenters. I believe they're still with us. And to address a question that just came in, the PowerPoint and a recording of this will be made available on our website. I'll make sure to link to that in an email to all of you as well, and that should be available sometime next week. And it looks like that's all the questions. So again, thank you so much to you, Christine, Caitlin, and Rachel for your time, your expertise, and your energy, and for supporting community food systems. Thank you so much to those on our call and for your interest in engaging with your communities. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, and we hope you'll join us for our food justice conversation in a couple of months. Take care, everyone.